I left.
It's like Hydra raid from October.
That's what I thought. I thought that this happened ages ago, but I know that Jackie Snow has been like in the process of this forever. That's why I put a congratulations on your new baby post on Twitter.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, Peter's got his wife pregnant and she gave birth in the time period this entire court case happened.
Yep. That's crazy.
Yeah.
Nice full-term court case.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a little ridiculous to be honest.
The court case is on its third trimester.
Yeah, it's I don't even, you know, the worst thing about it is I have to witness Maxwell and Doc have to defend on it, but I was in the entire thing. Cops literally didn't take stuff from the house and then put it on the other cops, and oh my god, it was such a shit show. It's one of those things that there's a lot of things I want to do next term. Some of them are a little might seem over the top, but I'm sort of getting to the point where I'm like, something drastic needs to happen in order to maintain accountability. And
oh, absolutely. Remember I told you a really long time ago when we had that talk at Parsons before you turned into your coffee cup. I was saying, you know, like, why is it that you don't just restructure everything? And at that point, I think that you were feeling very, you know, exhausted by the whole thing. And I guess my thought is, and my hope is that having the ability to have two mayors who are around and willing to work with one another and both able to, you know, like work on change, not having it fall completely on one person, that's kind of it's kind of reinvigorating, I hope.
It is. 100%.
Because that's how we fight the DOJ is by showing that the two mayors together are also state authorities.
I agree. I want to even go further. I don't know how to keep the PD accountable. Well, I didn't. Well, on a lot of things, right? So I look at this court case, and I know there was felony obstruction of justice as a part of the raid. I know that on a daily basis, people's rights are being abused. Yes. I know that if they bring it up to the police, it becomes kind of like talking to HR, you know, where HR actually works for the company. So HR is not actually there for the complainant. So it creates kind of like a situation where you can't expect accountability, because if there was, we'd see a lot more of it. Swift, quick.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
And so...
And also there's the additional issue that it is very difficult and kind of, unfortunately, you know, I guess it feels really bad, but you don't want to fire cops. Cops, you know, it's hard to fire cops and it feels bad, and if it happened for if every corrupt cop got fired, it would, unfortunately, it would drastically reduce, I guess, numbers? but also I think
so many cops now. Today at the meeting, they said people have to go to sleep so others can wake up.
So do you think that cops should be fired? Because I have been told by many people it's kind of frowned upon. You don't want to fire cops because a lot of people, it's their livelihood.
I don't give a fuck. I'm gonna be honest.
Yeah.
Because one would argue that if they're doing things bad enough that they need to be fired, it probably is that they're impeding on other people's livelihood, right?
That's true, but I guess it's just, what do you think is bad enough for someone to get fired?
I don't even, I'm not even on the firing. I actually don't believe in firings. In general, right? Unless it's like really, really bad.
Right.
I think the basic standard that they won't even reach, I tried to do this all the way back from Moss, but it's impossible, is that if something happens, you make a complaint, it gets settled within that hour or two. You bring the cop in. did something wrong happen, they get an apology, PD gives an apology. That's what 90% of people want. They want an apology and like some DAP. I don't care about how the DAPs work or like whatever, like the points. It gets caught up, in my opinion. Most people want an apology, but PD uses civilian complaints as a way to complain about the complainant, or turn it into their own like 2-week long drama episode of, did someone do something bad, to the point where the victim now is already moved past it, and they've already hit that, like, in their mind already drawn up, nothing's gonna happen, so I might as well kill them or never complain. You know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure. So, I am gonna send you. I already had Roselle look through this, but I drafted up an actual like initiative for the Castle Court thing.
Ooh.
Because I think it's, there's a lot with it that seems like, oh, it's cool in concept, but how are we gonna actually make this work? And I think I've ironed out a lot of those issues. I think that really it seems like, and DAPs are one thing, but I think so many police officers don't care about DAPs or suspensions or demotions, and those happen to be the ones who are the most corrupt anyway. When they get like if Carmine gets a suspension, that's just a day off, and if Quangle gets demoted, then too bad, he can still do the exact same things. But these so those things don't really matter much, and except for firing people, there's got to be kind of a middle ground of things that are effective punishments that will prevent people from doing more corrupt actions and misconduct, and will also satisfy the complainant. Because a lot of the time when police say, "Oh, we hear your complaint and therefore we've dapped this person," it's like, well, did you really do anything at all? You gave them a little mark on the paper, and they're just going to keep violating rights. So I think making the punishments,
what I
affect
heard?
the entirety of BCSO for Castle Court, that's gonna convince people more, and also making it affect pay.
I love that, and that's kind of the energy I'm on as well. So I'm glad you're thinking along those lines. I spoke to Michael earlier today, and originally what I wanted to bring into place was California law, and I think I kind of mentioned this to you, possibly, where they need to clearly state their name, badge number, and the reason for the stop, and they have to record it in a normal traffic stop, so non-violent felony situation. And the intent of that is so there are no predatory stops where someone's stopping someone because they're like, aha, I want to do something, or like cause a reaction, right? Because that is the mode.
I think that this is someone that I vaguely recognize from some other incident, so I need an excuse to get in there.
Yes, exactly. Yep. And that's like a basic right. Now, I started cooking even further, and this is going to sound a little insane, possibly, but I've been reading up unintentionally started reading up on that guy, the one who shot the CEO and shit. What's his name?
It's funny because you said that guy, and I already knew who you were talking about.
Oh, fantastic.
But yes.
Yeah, fucking Luigi. And it was very interesting in that it brought into play, like, so I don't know how true this is, but it seems pretty valid, is apparently it's been 8 months since the guy's been put in jail, and the defense does not have any of the discovery information. The standard is, I think, 2 to 3 months, but it's been 8 months now. And,
so much for fair and speedy.
Exactly. And the problem is that gives the prosecution an unfair advantage in knowing what everything is. And the prosecution's like, oh, there's 800 gigabytes of information. And the defense is like, well, we don't give a shit. We need that information because for all we know, there was a rights violation here. And as these things went into more detail, it turns out, and don't quote me on this, right? Like, I mean, some of this could be bullshit information, but you'll see why I'm bringing it up momentarily. But the allegation is that apparently there was a phone call stating, hey, this is the guy. And there was no, when they approached him, he had like a COVID mask on. And there was nothing that tied him to the scene. And law enforcement did not detain him. Instead, they surrounded him, demanded he take his mask off, which now that is a lawful order that requires detainment, and they made him give him the ID. Now, the reason I bring that up is it opens up the door of consensual, consensual encounters and all those other things. And where I'm going with this is there is nothing in law today in San Andreas that actually defines what a consensual encounter is, what a detainment is, what the bar is, what probable cause is, what RS is. And I think that needs to be written out, to be honest.
I agree. There was a whole argument on Twitter yesterday where Moose Knuckles was posting the definition of reasonable suspicion or something like that, and people were arguing with him over it, and I don't know if a consensus was ever reached, but everyone was just basically losing faith in, you know, the elected judges, but then also saying no one has a consensus of what that means. I also think that there's absolutely a necessity for the people to be educated on what their rights are. You know, and specifically, like, you know, even at the most basic level, you know, even I know since coming here, you know, never talk to police, always talk to EMS. Right? Like, the EMS need to know what went on with you, and they are not, you know, they are not going to share that information with the police.
Oh, that's not true.
Drug or something, or they aren't. Well, the idea is that they can't give you good treatment if you are too scared to tell them that you took a drug that
is true.
You know, they don't know. So you don't lie to the EMS, but absolutely wait until you have a lawyer to talk to police. But I think a lot of criminals and civilians misunderstand, you know, what they are and aren't, what they do and do not have the right to do in a traffic stop, for example, or, you know, they don't know if their rights are being violated. And a lot of the time you have criminals who are like, they can't do this, and it's absolutely something that is within the police's right to do. But I think even just having like some level of education for people that is like, you know, a little infographic that's like, here's the 3 things that you should know about a traffic stop. You know, if there's, you know, ask for the reason for the stop. You know, do not like speak to them without a lawyer present or whatever, you know. Like, don't give them reasonable suspicion to detain you further. And you know, it's just general stuff like that I think people really need to know, so they don't immediately think, I don't know what to do legally in this situation, so I'm gonna drive away.
I 1,000% agree. And I think getting those, like, to your point about like Moose Knuckles and the RS, there is no legal definition. In fact, reasonable suspicion, from my understanding, derives from Terry versus Ohio. And it's mistakenly the way that it was added into the case law here in San Andreas. Terry versus Ohio in San Andreas, they summarized it about frisks. But in United States, Terry versus Ohio is not just frisks, it's about RS. And absent of that, when we say what is RS,
everyone goes scenario. No one can actually define it. Everyone's like, well, imagine the situation where blah, blah, blah. And like, sure, you can explain that, but there are fringe cases. I think we've proven time and time again, you know, that assuming that people will operate in good faith is always, at least here, going to end up causing issues. We've done it with the DOJ, we've done it in so many different cases. And every time you realize, well, either someone thinks they're operating in good faith but is an idiot, or you know, is operating maliciously. But either way, these good faith, you know, definitions or lack of definitions,
I'll text you in a little bit,
aren't gonna, you know, sometimes we need more specific stuff. I heard Roselle showed me his like rewriting of one of the statements from the judicial powers thing, and I
Mm.
immediately had a comment about the last line, and he said that you had the exact same fight with him about it.
Which one?
Where it was okay, so for modification of the penal code,
Oh,
he
yeah, yeah, yeah,
the
yeah.
line new and updated legislation must follow the legislative proposal and approval process, which
Mm-hmm.
just sounds like extremely redundant. Uh, because you're restating what is a completely separate legal process,
Mm-hmm.
uh, but it is also kind of necessary, and I totally understand that because as much as I think it's if we want to cut down on the amount of restated legislative facts, and Barrett has commented about how a lot of legislation refers to other legislation, which refers to a third legislation that isn't even legislation anymore, and so it's hard to you know identify what's what. That kind of sometimes you got to reiterate to these people, hey, when you make a law, you have to follow the lawmaking process.
Agreed. Yeah, because they have shown that they don't know. The reality is our justices do not know our own legislation. And
Mm-hmm.
therefore, we have to make it nice and crystal clear. So, not even necessarily for their benefit, but for our own benefit too,
Yeah.
so that when they do cross that line, we can be like, there it is. Because
Yep.
the sheer fact that we have to rewrite this I was getting so mad rewriting it every time. Because every time we
Oh
talk
yeah.
about it, I was just like, I can't believe we have to turn this into 12-year-old language. Right?
Yeah.
I,
And even the 12-year-old language, it's like, okay, how can someone like you have to look through it through the lens of if I want to intentionally misconstrue this in a way where I have more power, can I do that? And then you think of
yes.
what they've done in the past where they've taken the word enact and taken that to mean that they can do every part of the legislative process from writing to proposing to constitutional check to
Mm.
contest period to ratifying the legislation. And that's none of that is what enact means. That's just like the mechanism of like putting it in the MDT. And
Yes.
but it's a word that has a potential multiple definitions, and so you
Yeah.
kind of have to specify every little thing.
It's too bad, to be honest. Like,
Yep.
because realistically, everything should be set up in such a way where it's like, you know, got the top level constitution, then the next level of legislation, and you just kind of know, hey, everything is scoped to the legislation above it. But
Hmm.
if those that we are working with refuse to scope or acknowledge the existence of any document outside of the paragraph they're reading, we're screwed.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm glad we're on the same energy on this. I was gonna bring up to her, I think we should get control of the PD budgets. Not that we do it, but we should open it up as consideration as to a mechanism we utilize. Yeah, it becomes like relief. Hmm. Wait, what the fuck is this? We're putting cum inside M&Ms? Wait, what? What is this supposed to actually say? Maybe gum and then it just like scuffed? How are you medi clapping on that? What the hell? Finally? Hmm.
Hi, Ken. You okay?
Yeah, I think the DOJ took my phone down.
Oh my goodness. How
Yeah.
dare they? I thought you died.
No, I'm good.
Okay, good.
I'm not saying we do this, but I think it's something we open the door for. I'm already considering, I'm very much on the needle of doing it for LSPD.
Mm-hmm.
Back in the day, I convinced Soze and the government to make PD accounts. I think the mayors should control the PD account. I'm not entirely convinced yet, but my initial ask for it when I was talking to Soze is like, we need a way to encourage the PD to be self-accountable. The more they work, right? They get money, they upgrade their vehicles. If they get sued, the money comes out of the account. I actually think that our vision for what it was intended for turned into the gamification of arrests.
Interesting.
And so back in the day, in the first 2 months of mayorship, the county made money when the arrests happened. Why? Because it's restitution, right? If someone commits a crime in your county, that arrest, you're getting restitution fees.
Yeah, especially because we're paying for all the rehab of all the locals that get drugs sold to them, or they get
correct
caught in crossfire.
And as a consequence of these accounts, unfortunately, like the idea was even more going to be more interesting. It was like, hey, then PD, we can send money to the PD like as mayors, and the PD chief can like set, PPO gets this much money, so and so gets this much money, chief gets this much money. So the idea was that like they can manage their own budget. But let's be honest, that's not what it is anymore, right? And the reason why I'm opening this up, and I'm not saying it, I'm saying we should consider it, is that that account, I would argue, is one of the reasons why there is no accountability by the departments to their own people. Because those that produce the most amount of money for the PD budget are going to be untouchable, right? Those who don't, it's kind of like whatever. You know what I mean? And
Yep.
in turn, why do they need you or why do they need me? Right?
Well, they are pretty much independent.
Yes.
I mean, we do
So,
pay them.
yeah, I mean, to a degree, not that much. Like, I'm going to be honest, every time Turner asks money, I'm like, don't you have budget money? You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, they haven't. VCSO has not asked me for money. They've spent $1 million of
Oh,
their own
yeah.
money on the helipad. They spent 400,000 on Aspen Park
Mm-hmm.
behind VCSO, which is really lovely. Um, my concern about the whole, us managing the budget thing is purely that I want to introduce this castle court thing, and if I do that, then not only will BCSO's pay be affected by
Mm.
strikes if they do corrupt things, but also they'll be able to earn increases to their pay if they
Mm.
host events. And I want them to have money for
Mm.
events so they can say, okay, well, we can just give people bonuses from our budget, or if we want to, you know. Think more long term, we can host an event and have our budget go or have our pay go up by $500 per hour. And so we're spending money on the people, but then our pay actually increases over time.
I think in a way what you're describing is in line with what I'm suggesting. I think
Hmm.
you have a different your castle thing, I think, effectively does what I'm describing, but in like a different way. So,
Yeah, I mean,
well,
it limits their ability to just use that money for whatever,
yes.
and it incentivizes the use of that money for things that benefit the community.
Hmm.
And if they won't do that themselves, then sometimes you got to do it for them.
1,000%. I mean,
That's why I'm too close to very close to BCSO right now, so I'm not gonna say this super loud, but it's actually I'm gonna do interviews obviously, but I'm actually I want to have a meeting with McNulty because I actually think, as much as I was against it at the very beginning because he's very mean to me, uh,
mm,
if he's on board with the Castle Court idea, then I think he would make a fantastic sheriff because Aspen tends to be
mm,
very not timid, but she wants to be liked by BCSO, and therefore she is not interested in disciplining them.
mm,
Plus,
yeah,
I think she can do a lot as lead ranger, which I think she's being distracted from by the fact that she is sheriff.
interesting. Um,
But yeah, Duncan also wants me to make him sheriff
oh my
and
God.
keeps talking to me as if I've already made him sheriff, which I think is funny. Party Hardy did the same thing. I think that they believe that if they continue to say it, then I will just, let them do whatever they want. But
I,
I might seem like I'm a little bit uh timid on the outside, but I'm not going to just let them walk over me.
no, and I believe that. I look, I'm going to be frank with you. Even Turner's a bit
You're
of a
Nino.
pussy. Listen,
Oh, really?
oh yeah, 100%. Like but then again, I think my definition of like, I think my expectation line might be way further from what PD thinks it is. You know
Mm,
what I mean? Because for me,
yeah.
I'm of the, because I expect this of my own people. Something happens, it gets sorted within an hour. You know what I mean? I
Right.
want PD to be the same because
Aaron
this
Speedy.
city moves fast. So
It
people
does, yeah.
need, and if most people just want a conclusion, like literally an apology or whatever, it's not going to happen again. That's what 90% of people want. And
Yeah,
even
absolutely.
Turner can't produce that. He does this. He does the same, similar. He's not. He's not like Moss level, right? He's hugely great. I get less headaches, but I know he's not going to hold anyone responsible, right? And
Mm,
and I think the reason why I started driving down this like traffic stop thing and like even thinking about like ways by which the law helps manage where they can and cannot spend money based on
yep.
their, let's say, survey of the local populace, and that survey could be non-felons too, is that
Ooh.
what it does is it puts you in a perspective where every day that you even if you're the chief, you can't just be like, well, I can look the other way. No, there is a
Right.
direct effect to if
Yeah.
you are negatively affecting law-abiding
Yeah,
citizens,
absolutely.
and it keeps.
Actually, I talked to Siny, and she has agreed to be contracted, at least to Blaine County,
Mm,
to both run surveys of, satisfaction surveys for BCSO and different specific groups within Blaine County. But she also, with her LS Job Connect, she hires people to do that kind of thing as well. So she could have a whole force of trained survey takers.
That would be really good. Yeah.
So I'm absolutely interested in supporting her on that mission.
Yeah.
And then having her basically take surveys of, I want to know, because I think Castle Court is good for making sure that that the people are satisfied with BCSO being held accountable. But there's a balance to be had where BCSO is not feeling so constrained in what they're able to do by, a sheriff who is, essentially a drill sergeant to them. They need to be, somewhat happy as well. I want them waking up. I want them patrolling.
Yeah. Yeah, the balance is definitely tough because you don't want them sitting in Castle Court all day.
That's true. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, the hope is that they will not. The hope is that they will avoid Castle Court by not doing corrupt things.
Yeah, that's a good point.
And if someone ends up in Castle Court, it will be like you are called to court. You can't just not go.
Yeah.
And so if you want to get back on patrol, you better not be doing things that are going to end up with you in Castle Court.
Absolutely. I want to point one last thing before I go and over to Snow's thing. There is a hey, how you doing? There is have you noticed how much money is going to PD?
Oh my God, have I? You mean in payment or like
yes,
what they're in, like us paying them?
I wanted to point at the restitution. Like I am currently paying. Oh my God, I forgot. Like $8-9 million is some shit. It's a big amount of money on a weekly basis.
I just checked the sliders. It's $5 million for this week for me.
Oh my God.
And that's like half of piece.
Now,
that's half of Blaine County's
now
total funds.
If you think about it from like a logical perspective, right? We are dumping money, tax money, into the police department.
Right.
And that money is tax money. What are people getting out of this? Do you know what I mean? Yeah. So if the people
100%.
are spending $5 million on it, but then when they go to jail, that money's also going to PD, where's the restitution?
Well, yeah, and a lot of, it seems like, at least for BCSO, a lot of them are independently quite rich, but but that money doesn't even go towards the things that BCSO, like the BCSO budget, they're still spending significant amounts of money on their helipad and stuff like that. And so that's all well and good, but then the money that the individuals are making isn't going back into the economy.
Exactly. We put money into them. It pays their checks to then get money off of people, which then still goes into their pockets, right? Yep. There is no... Anyways, it's something to cook on. I think we're pretty aligned on this, on where things I think need to go. There's some other things I want to talk to you about, and the big one being bills. Okay. Do you want to do it tomorrow or tonight? Because I got to think about cops and robbers. Otherwise, my head's
whatever works for you, because I'll be around all the time.
Okay. Let's do tomorrow. Or yeah, let's do tomorrow. All right.
All right.
Easy.
Sounds good to me.
You take care.
You too. Toodaloo.
Yeah, I think so too. I think she had a very... I want to see how much it is.